Hello, Krissa here. Welcome to episode 3 of FOF Talk. I am currently in Hong Kong at the moment, so I'll be doing this week's episode while DJ is off in London. I'm sure getting ready for his weekend. So last week, DJ did a little FOF talk about why we started FOF travel. And this week, what I'm going to spend a bit of time on is talking about different ways that we've used friends and friends of friends to help us travel before. So there are 3 instances that I'd like to share with you where I've used my friends, their friends, and my family to help me get around. The first was actually about 2 years ago when I was on my way to Sydney on a business trip. I had booked my flights to Sydney on a business trip for a client, and on my way there, I realized that DJ and I had a friend called Gwen who we hadn't seen in ages, and I thought I'd give her a shout. And it turns out I had the best time because Gwen then showed me around Sydney. She took me to all the local sushi restaurants, to all the really cool bars around town. She took me to Bondi Beach, and I had a really great time with her, spending time with her friends, getting to know them, and getting shown around the city like a local. And in exchange, she got to stay in my hotel room while I was there for the night. So she gave me essentially free coffees and guides and friends. And in exchange, I gave her my hotel room for the night to crash afterwards. The great thing about that was I kept in touch with her much more often after that. And I also made really good friends with her friend, James, who then went to London a few months later. I met up with him. So it was my turn to host and take him around Chinatown. He actually works at Google, so he took me into the Google campuses in London, and that was really, really cool. So just from that trip alone, I managed to get a free tour around Sydney, made, a couple of really, really good friends, and got a chance to reconnect with a friend I hadn't seen since high school in Hong Kong. So that was one example. The second one was not too long after that when I was planning a trip to New York. I had booked a month off work to do my yoga teacher training and go to Peru afterwards. So I spent all of my money booking the yoga teacher training course, the tour around Peru, my flights, and the last thing that I actually booked was my accommodation because I just had this gut feeling that there had to be someone that I knew in New York who was willing to help me out. So I sent a message, I used Facebook, I used emails, made a few phone calls, and it turns out that a really good old friend of mine from primary school in Singapore was living in Manhattan, and they had a spare couch for me to crash on. So I went to New York and I actually reconnected with my best friends from Singapore who I hadn't seen in 10 years. Ended up staying with them, accommodation all sorted, didn't have to pay for anything, had the best time with them, they showed me around, and made really, really good friends again in the process. Actually, Jill was a friend of a friend who was one of my roommates when I was in New York. She became a really good friend of mine along with Sarah, and now they've actually become one of FOF Travel's brand ambassadors in New York. And every time they're in town, Sam as well, visiting London, it's my turn to host. So I take them around Shoreditch, take them out to Chinatown, and basically practice the FOF way of traveling. So that's the New York episode. And the third was actually a few years ago when my cousin was visiting Hong Kong. I was still living in London. My cousin was coming over from Manila. She sent me an email saying, "Hey Krissa, I'm going to be in Hong Kong. Are you going to be there? Where shall I go? What shall I do?" The usual spiel. And unfortunately, I wasn't there, but DJ was at the time, and another really good friend of ours, Joe, was there. So I sent them a message saying, "Hey, my cousin's coming into town. Please, 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 can I just trust you to look after her and show her a good time?" And turns out she had such a good time that they couldn't even tell me what happened afterwards, which I still really needed to find out. But that was my way of connecting people remotely. So relying on my trusted friends to help a family member out, even when I wasn't physically there to do so. So that's, I guess, the Sydney episode shows the give and take nature of friends, where you can share roofs, lockers, coffees, and guides with each other physically. But FOF travel as well enables you to share your trusted network with other people, so they can also travel the world much safely and cheaply, and also with a lot more fun because they're doing it with people that you know and recommend. So that's how I've used my friends and their friends and my family to travel the world a lot cheaper, and that's essentially what we're trying to do with FOF travel. Because if you really think about it, relying on your friends and family is something that people do quite naturally every day anyway. And what we're trying to do with FOF is make that process a lot easier and a lot more accessible for people. So we're sort of automating something that people do quite naturally themselves anyway. So I'm sure over the next few weeks in FOF Talks, you'll find out more about what we do and why we do and how we do it. But that's just a short FOF talk for today about different ways that I've used my friends and my family. I'm sure DJ will probably do a similar one next week, but if you would like to join in the conversation, just send us a tweet or a status update on Facebook, Twitter, or GChat, hashtag FOF Talk, and DJ and I will be there every Friday to answer your questions between 3 to 4 p.m. Have a good weekend!